My name is Pascale. I'm the Vice-Chancellor and President at Swinburne University of Technology, and you are in for a treat. This afternoon session is actually one of the innovative features of that conference, where we're trying to kind of do things a little bit different, a little bit on the style of 10 Talk. And it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker for this afternoon session. And as I said in my discussion with Sally-Anne before, I'm very confident that you're going to find next 15 to 20 minutes exhilarating until we kind of get into the question and answer. So just a little bit of background on Sally. Sally is the CEO of Cicada in Innovation, and she will explain perhaps a little bit later the meaning of that particular name. But just deep tech technology innovator running for over 23 years. Prior to joining Cicada, as a CEO, Sally was the executive of the engineering team at Google, growing the Australian side from 11 engineers to over 800 and working in R&D. Sally has also chaired the task force for the federal government review of pathways to diversity in STEM, something that we really believe in, that Minister Hughes is also an investor mentor to startups and scale-ups across Australia. So I know she's got a few slides, but she's really eager to get into the Q&A. So Sally-Anne, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and I do like to walk around a little bit, so you forgive me that I'm going to be a bit unusual from maybe where we've been sitting and passively listening, and I might even ask some questions because I am known to go a little rogue as well. So my name's Sally-Anne Williams. I am the CEO of Cicada Innovations. We are Australia's oldest and largest deep tech incubator. We've been operating for over 23 years, and this is our original building on Gadigal down in Sydney at South Everleigh, right next to Redfern Station. And for those of you who maybe don't know what we do, we build science and engineering businesses. We actually have three sites across Australia now, and we do thousands and thousands of commercialisation programs, which I'll get into in a minute. Do is build science and engineering businesses. We don't know where founders have come from. What we care about is that they have an amazing idea and the potential to really drive huge impact through building businesses. So in this building that you can see behind me, I have about 50 resident companies, and they're doing everything in the life sciences, from medical devices, diagnostics, therapeutics, software as a medical device. We're the home of the National Space Industry Hub, so I have upstream and downstream space companies, and one of my companies actually has something today. So there is a launch party happening at about 7 p.m. tonight in Cicada. It's somewhere over in Europe that it's going. It's cold. I've seen the video. I'm going to watch online later if I can. We also have ag tech companies, new materials companies, quantum companies, battery companies, hydrogen companies. I'm going to semiconductor companies as well, and I'm probably forgetting some of my favourite children, as I refer to my startups in there, and if any of them are in the room, they will definitely tell me about it later. So we've been doing this for a while, and we've had some pretty good success, I would say. So we've incubated physically at that location over 350 businesses, but served thousands and thousands of others commercialised. Them raise $1 billion. We've had 6 exits. Actually, that's incorrect. It's 1.4 billion of exits, over 1,000 patents filed and thousands of jobs. Now, we are an independent. We started with some federal government funding and some state government funding, and also the input of our 4 shareholders at the bottom. But as a private company, we actually exist to serve a bigger mission than any 4 of those institutions, and it's a mission for about growing the deep tech economy, because we fundamentally believe that Australia's economic base needs to change, and we can't just keep digging things out of the ground, although we will continue to do that because there's some critical minerals and things we need to do, but we actually need to transform our economy for the good of the country, for the good of the world, and to actually, benefit people, planet and prosperity. So I've been doing it for a while. We're pretty damn good at it, I'd like to say. Over and above this, on an impact thing, I think, which is really cool, is the 85% survival rate. So typically you'd hear sort of a stat that are around sort of 80 to 90% of all fail, and they generally fail within the first 5 to 8 years of the business. We have an 85% survival rate for companies that actually land in our incubator and become residents over time. They stay with us a really long time, sometimes too. And the reason that they do is because they're working in these really complicated areas. And if you're a health company and you've got to go down a clinical pathway, boy, that is long. Really, really, really long. So we broadly work in these 5 thematic areas. We actually hate classifying things by verticals because it's just too narrow, and one of the really greatest strengths that we have in our facilities is that we bring people together and we make a collision between our founders and our businesses and the because we see opportunities where maybe they don't. But our longest residents in here, and just to give you a sample size of some of our residents and alumni companies and residency of Australia's most fantastic diagnostic companies. They also do antimicrobial resistance. They were founded when Ali and Alyssa, who won the Prime Minister's Prize for Science a couple of years ago, when J&J Labs closed down, and they literally bought a trolley with some kit up the road. Not really sure how that was acquired, but we're not going to worry about that. It was before my time, so it's not my problem. And now they have over 100 people and they sell to the largest labs on the planet. Regrow started with Anastasia Volkova, founder, Julian, spun out of University of Control. I think many of you probably know Morse Micro, founders and creators of Wi-Fi. Spun was residents with us. Whole bunch of different companies doing incredible things, and we love it. We're also a neutral player in the market. We're quite unique, Cicada. So a lot of people have never heard of us, but we're quite unique and quite hidden in the ecosystem, a little bit like our namesake. So we used to be called ATP Innovations, Australian Technology Park Innovation. Really, there was nobody on the marketing team when the company was incorporated because it was literally at Australian Technology Park, the National Innovation Centre. So really descriptive. And you can kind of see where people are coming from. But was rebranded about 6 years ago before I joined the business, and it was rebranded to sort of symbolise, I guess, the journey that deep tech companies go on. So deep tech companies, one, in the public domain, are very hidden and very difficult to see. They're often things that we benefit from. So if I think about SpeedX, you would not know that many of the COVID tests that have happened across the country were using their kits in the labs. You would never know that, but you benefited from it. So they're kind of hidden in our sector, but also they take a really long to come to pathway to market. Up to 8 to 15 years for most of these companies to kind of really kind of find their chops and get there. We work with hundreds of partners. This is actually just a small sample of them. And we work to actually bring together community, inventors, creators, scientists, engineers, government, global investors, to kind of bring them together and go, what does it take? Because we always say it takes a village, it takes a village, and change over time as we build these businesses and we incubate them all the way through to exit. But to give you kind of a better picture of what we look like, this is kind of what it looks like. And stage deep tech ventures coming in, generally over here, they're not exclusively from universities, and I'll come back to a stat on that in a moment, which might shock and awe you or horrify you, I'm not sure, depending on which side of the fence you sit. Work really closely with industry and corporates who are coming into us, seeking SMEs with solutions that they can adopt into their workplace. And we risk manage them because many of them have solutions in their workplace within 6 to 12 months, which means they're research. They're looking for an SME market already that can be adapted, right? And so we risk manage and what innovation really means to them. And it's not just an event and having a great on stage. It's too far for their pipeline to adjust. We work with investors, we work with universities, we work with government, we work with support services, peers and mentoring. It's kind of a crazy jigsaw puzzle. We're just one piece in it. And so for us, my team and I, we spend our day connecting the dots and making sure for each business that we're working with and each founder that we're coaching and mentoring along the way, that adjacencies around them at the time that they need, and then as they grow, we pull that apart and put the next lot of people around them because it changes over time. So what do we do in commercialisation services? Well, this is our entire business model. So it's actually pretty tough to do, and it's really tough to do well, and it's a horrible business model to do sustainably, but we do it really well, and we've grown substantively. We start at the top end. If you tipped this on its side, this way, if you can imagine that, we start with foundations, and this is some online programs that we have that all of you can take can access now, which is about fundamentally providing some core commercialisation skills. So really drilling down to science and engineering founders wherever they come from and going, what is your commercial understanding of the market that you're going into, and what do you need to do? There's a lot of time we spend on customer discovery. We're not putting you in front investors. That's a waste of everybody's time, and it will make the investors ring me up really cranky. So what do we do to kind of get you business ready? Elevate is our program that we work on, and we're focused on this time validating proof of business and that there is actually a business idea. So we try and break people at foundations and across an idea, and then they come into Elevate and we break them again. And go, actually, that's not a business, it's not a problem that the market wants to pay, or you've actually built the science and it's great, but you've used something in your new materials that is just totally out in the market, so it's never going to work. So we break them again, it's really fun. You can see this is multiple valleys of death in each stage of this. Then we do the one-to-one mentoring program, completely bespoke. So we work with later stage businesses, companies that are exploring the space sector. So we worked with a company called Omnitanker in New South Wales. They have a composite tank manufacturing company, wanted to explore space, had no idea how to do it. Well, we got them into a partnership with a large prime within 4 months of coming into that program and validated what that new market would be and how they could actually get to testing and doing their flight heritage, everything else that they needed. And in the same breath, we work with really super businesses that are actually validating their idea and trying to figure out whether they're out from universities or not. And we're paid to do that by our partners. We're paid by the GRDC, multiple state and federal governments to do it. We're paid by industry partners to do it. And we're paid by universities to do it who go, I've got this one group of people and I don't know whether there's something there or not. And we set up KPIs and we hold them to that. People really love coming to a meeting with me every month. They love my team every week, and every month they go, oh my God, Sally, it's such a tough conversation. Well, I've got no time, so we've got to get to the chase and ask what's and not. And then we incubate them. So we have 3 sites across Australia right now. We have the site at South Everleigh in the health precinct there, and we're now the operators of Jumar down in CSL's research building down in Melbourne in the Parkville precinct. And Jumar is a collaboration between CSL, University of Melbourne, and we support Breakthrough Victoria to develop biomedical companies there. And then we have our alumni, they check out, they never really leave, they come back, they teach, they mentor, and they invest in our program. So it's a bit of a summary of our people. I want to give you a little bit of an insight about what we see, and this is both our 23-year trend data, but actually this data, which is Australia's oldest and largest deep we acquired. Yeah. And I'm just going to move that up a bit because I feel like it's dropping in and out a little. That's probably better. And so I want to sort of break open a little bit of this myth that we have about where founders come from and who they are. So of the 100 and in Tech 23 last year, we did a national search. It's been going for over 13 years. Some of the largest companies that you've ever seen in Australia, Canva, Airwallets and others have all been on the Tech 23 stage. Morse Micro, Flirty, Propeller, a huge number of them. But what we found is as we scour the country, is we find these unique companies with really hidden skills and capabilities, but where they originate and where the company is born from might surprise you. So out of 128 companies that we found vetted viable deep tech businesses in Australia last year that we considered for the 23 to put on stage, 9 of them were actually independently. So that means actually 98 companies, 76% of all of that we saw and considered for Tech 23 founded, not spun out from university. And actually, when we go back over our 23-year history of Cicada innovation, that holds true for us. At any given time in our residency pool, there's only been 23 to 24% of direct spin-outs from universities. And I think if you look at any of the Scopa data and things like that, we know, I think the 2022 data from memory, if it serves me right, was 49 spin-outs across Australia. So when we look at that data, we could have an, oh my God, oh no, the sky is falling, it's a huge challenge problem, we've got to fix this, we need to have more spin-outs from universities. Or we could actually kind of go in a different direction and go, is that a problem? Are we really concerned about it? And if I put on my hat as an investor, if I put on my hat as a commercial person, because that's where I've spent most of my career, I want viable businesses. Viable businesses need to be directly need to be solving a large addressable problem of the market. And if they're deep tech, it needs to be a global market because there's not enough money in Australia to make them commercially viable. So do I care where they come from? No. Do I care that they thrive and survive? 100%. And let me unpack this a little bit more for you because I think it's a really important one for us to get into. So I want to tell you first of all, though, before I get into what motivates them and where the role of university is tell you a little bit about Raj. Raj is working on decarbonising diesel engines. 18 months ago, a little bit longer than though, when she came through StartMate, which is a phenomenal accelerator program that I'm personally an investor and mentor in. But she's also one of our Tech 23, and she has no science and engineering background. She's a graduate from a business degree, but she's worked in industry for many years, of which those 96 founders I mentioned before have all worked industry for many, many, many years. And she came across this problem and this frustration that she observed with the fact that in the energy transition, nobody's talking about carbon capture, or very few people are talking about direct air capture and capture from diesel engines. And diesel isn't going away anytime soon. My husband's Sri Lanka. If you've travelled to Sri Lanka, if you've travelled to India, if you've travelled to lots of countries around the world, there's still an incredible amount of diesel trains. If we look at our trucking industry in Australia, diesel is still the vast majority of it. Diesel is on every South Pacific island and every generator. If you go to the Maldives and stay there, backup generators are all diesel. It's not going to go away in the next decade. So what can we do to mitigate this? And she's come up with an incredible technology and worked with science and engineering companies and her co-founders to actually validate that, and is working through to her first commercial trial, which is going to be in WA. And because it's commercial in confidence, I can't tell you about it yet, but it is coming later this year. When we out what motivates, when we look into those deep tech founders, the 128, and we look at what motivates them, I think this is where it really sort of shows why they tend to be over the age of 40. They tend to have a fair bit of industry experience, a higher degree, so a master's them back in the day, and actually build their business based on that science and engineering. They've had this gap where in their career where they've been in industry and they've really kind of problem that they're facing. So when we look at the top 5 reasons that they start business, the top 3 are really the key ones to know. Number 1, environmental concerns and sustainability. We're seeing an increasing number of founders, and that should be no surprise to anybody, increasing founders building that. Personal passion and experience. And yeah, sure. Mic me up. Fabulous. We'll just chuck that one in the pocket. I don't think I've ever been mic'd up so much. Okay, so one of the things that I think is really interesting is this notion of personal passion and experience. And this is really critical because when you've been in industry for a while and you've raised up through the ranks, you tend to find everything that frustrates you. And you generally get to this middle to sort of senior level management where you're just like, why can't we change it in your organisation? And somebody goes, yeah, and then you have a little innovation lab and you tinker away with it and then they crush your dreams and they shut it down because that was fun, but it was innovation theatre for a while. I feel like some people have maybe been on that journey. Maybe you've done that in your universities. And so they get frustrated, but they have the wherewithal and the capability to go solve this on their side. And these are people that are hacking on things over the weekend. They're building stuff in their garage. You do not want to know how many deep tech founders actually started things in their garage. I've got an aerospace company in Cicada Innovations right now creating thrusters who actually started in their garage, and I'm just like, oh, I hope you never told your local council what you were doing there and you didn't have employees there, but you know, come on in, let's work through your workplace health and safety plan. And they identify market gaps and opportunities, and I think that's what makes these founders so successful, is they understand, they're deeply connected to the market, they deeply understand the problem and the opportunity, and they can find a pathway there to fill it. They rarely start with going, I've got a great breakthrough, and kind of go, and here's the addressable problem that can solve. Instead, we see a lot of academics actually coming to us and coming into our programs and going, look at my shiny tech, look at this amazing thing that I've done. And they sit there and I go, so what? And they go, but it's really cool. And I'm like, so what? What does it matter? And I asked that 5 times, and by the 5th time, you can see it dawn on them that if they can't articulate to me in a commercial reality what that means and who it solves a problem for and what the market opportunity is, they're never going to get that investment. So the so what really matters. What do they need? This was another fascinating data point. And by the way, if you want the Tech 23 Insights report, just go onto Cicada Innovations website. You can download it. There's a whole bunch more data there. It's really cool. Definitely dig into it. The number one thing they need after funding, because any startup founder you ask, the number one thing, I need money, money's going to solve everything. Actually, money doesn't solve everything for deep tech founders. Partnerships is one of the things that solves things for them, and it's absolutely critical. So on average of that 128 companies that we sampled last year, and this rings true again, we validated it this year with looking at sort of, all of our residents across Cicada, they have 2.8 partnerships live and active at any given time. Now, some of them obviously more, some of them less. And this is who they're partnering with. Industry, universities, research institutes, local, international. They don't actually care where you're located. They care about who you have and what kit you have and how you can partner with them in a two-way win-win way. And so what that looks like is, and for industry in particular, which is the number one area of where they want partnerships, it's the number one critical thing for any deep tech startup, they want to build because that end user is critical for them. They cannot wait and bring a product all the way through to its market fit state and market ready state and then try and sell it to industry because it will be completely wrong. They'll have wasted way too much money, they'll be out of runway, and I will be forced to be going in and having a really difficult conversation about them not being able to afford to pay their employees, and they're going to have to get shut down. So building in parallel with that commercial partner is critical. Validating the science and the output for an industry partner for what their needs are, so better than what their current standard of their tool is. Conducting market research, pilot solutions, paid pilots preferably, that's what the holy grail that they're all after. But testing in a live environment and finding out what the gaps are in their technology. And it's often not just the technology where there's gaps, it's actually the implementation. So I was in Perth last week, and I'm just going to tell you a fun fact because I love ag. My family were involved in farming, we had fruit shops growing up, so the ag community is kind of near and dear to my heart because it is in my heritage. But one of the things I find with ag tech founders quite often, especially when they come out of universities, they're going to give me robots, they're going to automate things, it's going to be amazing, and they've never worked on a farm. They've never spoken to a farmer. They've never understood what the farmer's constraints are around their day, and they wonder why nobody will buy their product because they've spent years perfecting it and now they're trying to be at that point of sales. And so partnerships at that earliest stage, it's why we do so much work with the GRDC and the companies that we have coming through the pipeline, is because we want them doing field trials way before that product is anywhere close to completion. So they're building for the farmer. They're building for that partner, for that end user. Rux Energy is a great example. If anybody was in Sydney yesterday and saw the news, you might have seen Jehan on Channel 9 because the Premier in New South Wales announced $175 million into net zero collaborations and partnerships, and Rux, one of our residents, was a recipient of that. And they're a new materials company and they're looking at the challenge of hydrogen storage. So again, one of the things we think about the possibility of hydrogen, it's not how do we just produce it, it's how do we store it and optimise for that. I want to talk about, though, the role of universities, because that's what you all care about. We don't care about industry, we don't care about community, government, anybody else. I mean, we do, but we really care about universities because that's where all of you are from. But actually, the role of universities in deep tech is really critical, but maybe not in that direct linear spin-out way that I sort of started with. So of the 128 founders, 41% of them had partnerships or have active partnerships with universities and research groups. And the reason that they do that is really quite a little bit different to what the narrative in the marketplace is. It's about getting access to cutting edge research, but typically for commercial agreements and commercial sort of work that they're asking the universities do. It's 100% the talent pool. One of the things that our residents love about us is that we can literally go into not just our shareholders, but pretty much any institution and attract talent for them. We also give opportunities through, internship programs and things like that. Our companies love it. Tech transfer opportunities, grant funding and resources, validation and credibility, and network and industry connections. And these are all things that they're seeking from university partnerships, and they're seeking them to be a frictionless experience and a win-win on both sides. And so I've got a photo of Tom here. So Zefco is one of our resident companies. Tom and his team actually have a long history of commercial success creating high-performance materials, and they started in the yachting sector and yacht racing. Who knew that was a whole high-performance materials thing? So when it tells you the story, you go, yeah, that makes absolutely sense that they need lighter, better fabrics that has all of these properties. But they had a commercial business. But one of the things that frustrated him and his founders very deeply was that textile finishing and the manufacturing process is incredibly pollutive. 20% of global water pollution and 3% of global carbon emissions from the clothes that we wear. And so they have a plasma coating technology that has no water and no nasty chemicals. Now, they're based in Sydney, and the team is based there. They do distribution overseas, but their manufacturing, their collaborations is with Deakin University. And so when I think about partnerships, again, it's not just a proximity thing. I think proximity is great, but proximity should never, ever, and will never for a business be a limiting factor. They will partner collaboratively together with wherever the opportunity lies. And so I think the untapped area that we need to focus a lot more of our conversation on and a lot more of our work and our effort, because it's the area of greatest reward on both sides of the equation, for both the founders and their potential business, but also for the universities over time as well. So I'm going to wrap up there with one thing that I'm going to do is to challenge you all. This is my because I've got the microphone right now. I've got two, so I'm incredibly powerful. But I'm just going to give a bit of a shout out and a call out to an event that's coming up, because one of the things we are doing a search on is the next 23 companies to put on a stage later this year in Sydney, and we're showcasing deep tech companies across Australia. So I'd love all of you, if you've got deep tech companies in your network that are hidden, that they're a little bit like the cicada that sits underground for 18 years because it's preserving its species and only comes out when the environment's right and it's ready to thrive and go on and do its bit and it's really noisy. I'm ready for those companies. I want those next lot of cicadas that are going to emerge so that we can put them on the stage and showcase them to the world. So that's my ask of you before we get into a conversation. But I'm really keen to get into that conversation side of things and sit down and have a chat with you about what is it that we can do collectively to actually create a win for Australia. And the one thing I'll say on this is it's really important, if we're thinking about growing a deep tech economy, that we're actually not thinking about what's in it for me, that we're thinking about what's in it for we. Because if we actually build that, we'll all win. But more importantly, I think we'll actually have a fundamental opportunity for kids like me who grew up in a regional rural area, first in family to go to finish high school, go to uni, do all of those good things. Shout out Griffith, I see you up the back. But, to be a part of something that's really exciting and can be transformative, not just for us, but for the entire world.
Ooh. Thank you, Sally Ann. I did tell you were up for a debate. Fascinating. We only have about a couple of minutes.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But,
damn it.
It's clear from the presentation that you're saying the university is not always a source, but it is a very important component.
100%.
And some of the questions that we received are really about, what do you think makes a successful partnership with a university?
Oh, I love that question.
When does it work best?
So when it works really well is if you don't go into the conversation asking what's in it for me. If you actually go in it with incredible curiosity and go, how can I help them? What is it that can I do? And actually assume that you're building a relationship for the long term. So don't seek to, fleece these SMEs for a huge amount of money. Don't seek to lock up IP. That won't be helpful to them. You might actually prevent them from their future capital raises, right? Don't seek to hinder them. Seek to think about that first relationship and that first conversation as an opportunity to build it for the long term. So Tom with Deakin, they're ongoing. They're part of their CRC. They were partnering with them before that they won the CRC bid. They then went in and put in their own money to be part of that CRC. That has built an ongoing and growing collaboration. And I think if you do that and you create that win-win on either side, that's what everybody wants. It's got to be a little bit like, I hate using this metaphor, but it's a little bit like a relationship or a marriage. Maybe not a marriage because some of us may not care about that, but it is about a relationship. And how do you make that a win-win on both sides and not look for the short-term win, but the long-term perspective as well?
And looking at the kind of global stage where you would have seen some systems that work better than others, what do you think is the key to a good tech transfer sort of system into a university?
Ooh, Look, I think one of the fundamental things that's really interesting to me, again, is that long-term view. What are you trying to achieve here? If you're going to have a blanket policy where you're going to take 20%, 30% or whatever and try and reserve that for the university, you've got to understand that you're leaving all the risk with the founders, right? You're taking a portfolio approach as a university. You're a little bit like a venture capitalist. You're like, one of these will pay off, many won't fail, but, you know, I'll make my money back and that's okay, or at least I'll break even. But you're actually asking that founder at some point to quit their job, at some point to put their entire future on the line, and it's not certain and it's not guaranteed. Now, whether that founder is the academic founder or it's somebody else that comes into it, you need to leave them enough equity to go do that. You also need to make sure that they're actually attractive to venture funds going on. Venture funds, I've sat there and I sit on review committees, so confidentially, I've chaired lots of review committees at federal and state levels for lots of different grants programs, and I sit on venture fund things all the time. And they have actually refused to give grants or refused to invest in things where the cap table is messy. So don't do that, because actually you hurt them, you harm them, and they're not going to want to work with you again. And once they leave the nest, they'll go try and find with somebody else. So it's really important to take the long-term view and go, maybe they'll work, maybe they won't. But if they don't work, you know, if you hog tie them at the start and they can't succeed, you're going to get nothing anyway. So why not have a little bit of something versus nothing at all?
And one of the questions that came, which I think is of interest, because a lot of government think it's all about creating precincts, you know, whether it's Lot 14 in Adelaide or whether it's Fisherman's Bend. What do you think is the role of a precinct in creating that kind of vibe of innovation?
I love this question. I'm slightly anti-precinct, a little bit. I am, but I'm not, right? Because a precinct alone doesn't make magic happen. It's people that make it happen, right? So if you start with a place-based strategy, you're going to get it wrong because you're thinking about the infrastructure and the building. If you start with a people-based strategy and go, what do the people need? What do my customers need? Which are your founders and your startups, which is how you make a successful product and build a business. But if you start with that place and go, what do they need? It starts with relationships, it starts with mentors, it starts with networking, it starts with that connectivity. You can build that and then you build the precinct around it, right? Place is secondary to people and relationships. And I can't harp on this one enough because I have so many conversations about it. We are out at Westmead right now. Westmead is a phenomenal area, catchment area. If I look at the number of hospitals, the number of research groups that are there, research institutions that are there, universities that are there, you know, it's one of the largest growing populations serving Sydney. They've got incredible clinical trial infrastructure. And yet people, the reason that we're there now and we've been brought in is to help build that glue and that connective tissue between people who are very busy being very expert at what they do, but they don't have the ability to connect the dots across it. And so we're a little bit of that connective tissue. And so place without people is just a bunch of buildings and they're very siloed. And I'm sure you've all walked through buildings in your own institutions where the people on one floor don't know the people on the other floor or even next door to each other. Even in Cicada, I need to make my founders talk to each other. It doesn't happen just because they're there by proximity. You have to program it and you have to be deliberate and you have to be really intentional, like anything you want to achieve.
Well, thank you, Sally. We're running out of time, but I think we'd all agree that if passion and enthusiasm is the key ingredient to innovation, she's got some in store. I think you will be staying around for other conversations, but can I please ask everyone to join me in thanking Sally Ann?